A woman went out shopping and never came back. 14 years later, her family uncovers the shocking truth. Late afternoon light filtered through the half-drawn curtains in the Wilson family living room, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. Peter Wilson, now 50 years old, shifted uncomfortably in his wheelchair, wincing as he attempted to find a more comfortable position. It had been 14 years since the accident, a sudden stroke that sent him tumbling down the stairs, leaving him with a broken hip and confined to a wheelchair. Though the years had passed, those physical limits remained a constant reminder of how drastically his life had changed. "Dad, do you want a blanket?" Claire called from the kitchen, already grabbing one from the hall closet before he could answer. At 19, she was the only one of his children still living at home, shouldering the responsibility of his daily care with a maturity beyond her years. "I'm good, sweetie," Peter replied, his voice carrying a weariness that had become part of his personality. "What time did John say he'd be here?" "Carl," said Peter's second oldest son, now 25, checking his phone. "He said around 6. Should be here any minute." Carl had inherited his father's broad shoulders and cleft chin, but his temperament was more measured, more practical. He worked as an accountant at a firm downtown, having put himself through college with scholarships and part-time jobs after their mother vanished. "Lucas, could you turn that down?" Lucy called from the dining room, where she was setting the table. At 23, she had become a responsible young woman managing a local bookstore. Her dark hair, shoulder length, was pulled back in a practical ponytail as she moved between the kitchen and dining room. 15-year-old Lucas, sprawled on the couch with the remote in hand, finally lowered the volume on the sports highlights he'd been watching. "I'm just searching for a good movie," he defended himself, scrolling through streaming options. "What about that new sci-fi one, the one with human-like aliens?" "No aliens," Peter said with a small smile. "You know Claire hates those scenes where something bursts out of someone's chest." Claire stepped into the room carrying a stack of plates. "I don't mind aliens, I just don't want it happening during dessert." Their familiar banter filled the house with warmth, a testament to how they'd managed to hold on as a family. Despite everything, every weekend they gathered like this, all 5 kids coming together for dinner, conversation, and a movie. It was their ritual, their way of maintaining bonds that had kept them strong through years of absence. The table was set, and Lucy took a step back to admire her handiwork. 6 place settings, including one at the head of the table for John. Each plate was perfectly aligned, glasses filled with ice water, napkins folded neatly beside forks, and knives. Everything in its proper place, just as their mother had taught her to do. "Something smells amazing," Carl said as he entered the dining room. "Lasagna," Claire replied proudly, "and I made garlic bread too." Lucas abandoned his movie search and joined them at the table, his lanky frame folding into his usual chair. "Can we start? I'm starving," he complained, eyeing the steaming dish at the center of the table. Peter maneuvered his wheelchair into place at the head. "We wait for John. We always wait until everyone's here." "But the food's getting cold," Lucas argued, leaning forward. "I'll call him," Carl offered, already dialing his brother's number. After a moment, he frowned. "It goes to voicemail." They silenced their chatter as minutes ticked by. The lasagna cooled. Ice in their water glasses began to melt. Peter checked his watch as worry lines deepened on his forehead. Just as Lucy was about to suggest they start without John, they heard a car pull into the driveway and the front door slam open. John rushed in, his 30-year-old face flushed with a mix of excitement and concern. His usually neat appearance was disheveled, tie loosened, top button undone, dark hair falling across his forehead. He glanced around at his family seated around the table, waiting for him. "Sorry I'm late," he said, breathing hard. There was an urgency in his voice that put everyone on guard. "It's okay, we were just..." Peter began, but John cut him off. "I found something," he blurted, pulling out his chair but staying standing. "About Mom." The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. The temperature felt like it dropped a few degrees. Shoulders tensed, faces hardened. "I got a call from Detective Vaughn today," John continued, fumbling with his phone. "They found something. I need to show you." "Sit down, John," Peter said firmly. "We've been waiting for you. The food's getting cold." "Dad, you don't get it. This is important." John remained standing, clutching his phone like a lifeline. "Just give me 1 minute." "Your father's right," Carl intervened, his voice calm but authoritative. "Let's eat first. Whatever it is can wait until after dinner." John scanned the table for an ally, but found none. Lucy was staring at her plate. Claire was biting her lip, and Lucas was watching him with annoyance and unease. "We agreed not to talk about Mom anymore," Lucy said quietly. "Not during family time." "But this is different," John insisted. "The police found enough evidence." Carl's voice rose. "We know what happened. She left us. She couldn't handle it. Dad's accident, the medical bills, 5 kids to raise on her own. She met someone else and just took off." "That's not true," John shot back. "Mom would never do that." "She did though, didn't she?" Lucy joined in, her calm facade cracking. "Dad's in a wheelchair. We're drowning in debt because of those medical bills, and she vanished without a trace. What else would you call that?" 14 years, John," Carl added, his voice softening. 14 years without a word. No calls, no messages, nothing. What more proof do you need?" The argument escalated, voices overlapping, as years of pain and resentment bubbled to the surface. Lucas shrunk into his seat, while Claire looked helplessly between her feuding siblings. "Enough!" Peter's voice thundered through the room, immediately followed by a violent cough that bent him double in his wheelchair. The fighting stopped on the spot. Claire sprang up to pat her father's back, offering him a glass of water until his coughing fit subsided. "I'm sorry, Dad," she murmured, then turned to her siblings. "Please, let's not do this. Dad's been looking forward to tonight. All week, he misses us. Can't we just have one peaceful dinner?" A heavy silence settled over the table, broken only by Peter's strained breathing as he recovered. "Fine," John finally said, sliding into his chair, his jaw tight with frustration. "But you all need to know this isn't just another dead-end lead. The police found Mom's car. It's underwater in a river." Despite their skepticism, every head snapped up in shock. "What?" Peter's voice trembled. "Detective Vaughn called me this afternoon," John continued, sensing their attention. "They found her car in a river. That's why I was late. I was on the phone with him getting details." Peter turned to Claire. "Get my phone from the side table, please." She hurried to grab it, watching as her father scrolled through, his notifications with trembling fingers, his face going pale. 4 missed calls from Detective Vaughn," he confirmed, looking up at John. "Did they find her body?" John shook his head. "I don't know. He said they're processing the scene now and asked if we could come down." The family exchanged glances as dinner was forgotten. The shocked news sank in. "We should eat something first," suggested Claire, breaking the stunned silence. Her practical nature took over as she looked at her father with concern. "He has to take his medication with food, and it'll just be a few minutes." Carl nodded. "She's right. Let's eat quick, then head out." They ate in tense silence, the lasagna now bland in their mouths. Forks dragged across plates as they hurried through the meal, minds racing with unspoken questions. When they'd eaten just enough to keep from starving, Carl and Lucas began clearing the table while Lucy and Claire helped Peter get ready for the unexpected trip. Claire gathered his medications and a blanket, and Lucy grabbed his wallet and phone. "Are you sure you want to go, Dad?" Claire asked softly as she adjusted his sweater. "We could stay and wait here." Peter shook his head resolutely. "I need to be there. Outside, the evening air had grown colder, a chill settling in that hadn't been there earlier. The old family SUV, modified to accommodate Peter's wheelchair, was parked in the driveway of their modest suburban home, a single-story ranch, just outside a quiet neighborhood, surrounded by oak trees that had witnessed the family's joys and sorrows for years. John and Carl carefully helped their father from the wheelchair into the front passenger seat. They folded the wheelchair and stored it in the back. Lucy, Claire, and Lucas climbed into the middle row as John settled behind the wheel. "I'll drive," he said, adjusting the mirrors. "I know exactly where to go." As he pulled away, John noticed how the house looked from the outside. The porch light on, a warm glow spilling from the windows onto the lawn. To anyone passing by, it seemed like a peaceful home on a quiet night, hiding the turmoil roiling inside these walls for 14 long years. The SUV cruised down familiar streets, past the high school the five of them had attended, past the grocery store where their mother was last seen. John gripped the wheel tightly, fighting to keep the car under the speed limit as adrenaline coursed through him. "What exactly did Detective Vaughn tell you?" Peter asked, breaking the tense silence. John kept his eyes on the road. "Not much. Just that they found Mom's car in a river while they were running a different investigation. He said they'd need us to come look at the scene." "After all this time," Lucy murmured. "Why now?" No one had an answer. John's phone buzzed with another message. "That's Detective Vaughn," he said, glancing at it. "He's sending the exact location. It's at Millerton Lake." "That's nearly 30 minutes away," Carl noted from the passenger seat. "What would Mom's car be doing so far out?" The unspoken implication hung in the air. Millerton Lake was remote and secluded, the kind of place someone might pick if they didn't want to be found. The rest of the drive passed in uneasy silence, each family member lost in their own thoughts. As they left town behind, streetlights grew scarce and the road narrowed. John switched on the high beams as they turned onto a gravel access road, winding through dense woods toward the lake. The SUV bounced over the uneven terrain, forcing John to slow down as he navigated potholes and ruts. After several minutes, the trees parted to reveal the still, dark waters of Millerton Lake, the surface reflecting the flashing lights of police vehicles parked along the shore. John pulled the SUV as close as he could and turned to his father. "Ready?" Peter nodded, face set in grim determination. Carl and Lucy helped him out of the car and into the wheelchair while Claire placed a hand on his shoulder. As they stepped onto the muddy ground, a foul smell hit them immediately. Stagnant. Water, mud, and something else that spoke of things long submerged and recently disturbed. Lucas wrinkled his nose and hung back slightly, while his older siblings navigated the wheelchair across the uneven terrain, wheels occasionally sinking into soft spots. Claire stayed close to her father's side, her arm linked with his as they approached the police perimeter. John walked a few steps ahead, scanning the crowd of officers for a familiar face. He spotted Detective Vaughn standing near the water's edge, deep in conversation with a uniformed officer. Vaughn was a stocky man in his early 50s, salt and pepper hair, and a perpetually tired expression, someone who'd seen too much in his career. "Detective Vaughn," John called, moving quickly. The detective turned, and his face lit up when he saw John. "John, you made it," he said, glancing past him at the rest of the family coming closer through the mud. "I see you brought everyone." "We had to be here," John replied simply. "What did you find?" Vaughn motioned toward the lake, where a tow truck's winch had already lifted something out of the water. On the shore sat a car, waterlogged and covered in silt and aquatic plants. Even after 14 years, there was no mistaking the faded, blue sedan that had belonged to Catherine Wilson. "We recovered it earlier this afternoon," Detective Vaughn explained as the rest of the family caught up. "We weren't even looking for it. We had a helicopter searching this area as part of a drug trafficking investigation. The pilot saw something reflecting in the water from above. Peter stared at the waterlogged vehicle, his expression unreadable. "Did you find?" he tried to ask, but Vaughn beat him to the answer. "No bodies," he said softly. "That's the strange part. The car was empty when we pulled it up." "Empty?" Carl repeated, shocked. "Are you sure?" "Completely empty," Vaughn confirmed. "But we did find some interesting items inside." "What kind of items?" John asked eagerly. Detective Vaughn reached into his pocket and produced a sealed evidence bag containing a water-damaged photograph. This was in the glove box, sealed in a plastic bag, which preserved it somewhat. "It's a photo of your mother." Peter reached out with trembling hands to take the bag, staring at the faded image of Catherine, smiling carefree in a moment captured before her disappearance. "There was something else," the detective continued, his voice growing cautious. "We found items that belonged to a man, a pair of men's sunglasses, a baseball cap, and a receipt with a man's name on it." "I knew it," Lucy said, suddenly bitter. "She ran off with someone. How could she do that?" "We don't know that yet," John protested immediately. "What other explanation is there?" Carl challenged. "Mum's car at the bottom of a lake, men's items inside, no sign of her. It points to her staging her disappearance." "Our investigation suggests the car was deliberately sunk," Vaughn added. "There's no damage consistent with an accident. The windows were down, letting water fill it until it sank. No sign of foul play otherwise." "She knew it was illegal," Lucy said, crossing her arms. "Abandoning 5 kids. She couldn't just walk away without consequences, so she made it look like something happened to her." "That's ridiculous," John shot back. "Mom would never leave us like that." "But she did, right?" Lucy pressed, tears brimming. "Dad's in a wheelchair, we're drowning in medical bills, and suddenly she's gone without a trace. What else would you call it?" 14 years, John," Carl said, voice softer now. 14 years without a word. No phone calls, no letters. What more proof do you need?" Their argument grew heated, voices overlapping as years of pain and resentment spilled out. Lucas sank into his seat, and Claire looked helplessly between her siblings. "Enough!" Peter's voice boomed through the night, followed by another hacking cough that bent him over in his wheelchair. The argument halted immediately. Claire jumped up and patted her father's back, offering him water until his coughing subsided. "I'm so sorry, Dad," she whispered, then turned to her siblings. "Please stop. Dad's been looking forward to tonight all week. He misses us. Can't we just have one peaceful dinner?" A heavy silence settled over them, broken only by Peter's ragged breathing. "Fine," John said, settling softly into his chair, jaw clenched with frustration. "But you all need to understand that this isn't just another dead-end lead. The police found Mom's car. It was underwater in a river. Despite their earlier resistance, everyone snapped to attention." "What?" Peter asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Detective Vaughn called me this afternoon," John continued, seizing his moment. "They found her car in a river. That's why I was late. I was on the phone with him, hearing all the details." Peter turned to Claire. "Claire, get my phone from the side table, please." She scurried off to fetch it, watching as her father tapped through notifications with trembling fingers, his face gray. 4 missed calls from Detective Vaughn," he confirmed, looking up at John. "Did they find her body?" John shook his head. "I don't know. He said they're still processing the scene. He wants us to come see it." The words hit them like a wave, and dinner was forgotten as they stared at one another in stunned silence. "We should eat first," Claire suggested gently, breaking the stillness. Her practical instincts took over. "Dad needs to take his medication with food, and it won't take long." Carl nodded. "She's right. Let's eat quickly and then go." They finished the lasagna in silence, forks scraping plates as though They were racing the clock. When they'd eaten just enough to ease the urgency, Carl and Lucas began clearing the table while Lucy and Claire helped Peter prepare to leave. Claire grabbed his medications and a blanket, and Lucy collected his wallet and phone. "Are you sure you want to go, Dad?" Claire asked, her voice soft as she adjusted his cardigan. "We could stay here while everyone else checks it out." Peter shook his head firmly. "I need to be there." Outside, darkness had fallen, and a cold breeze drifted through the trees that hadn't been there when they first sat down to dinner. The old family SUV, adapted for Peter's wheelchair, was waiting in the driveway of their unassuming suburban home. A modest, single-story ranch just on the outskirts of a small town, surrounded by sturdy oak trees that had seen the family's highs and lows over decades. Carl and John carefully lifted Peter from the wheelchair into the front passenger seat, folding and stowing the wheelchair in the back. Lucy, Claire, and Lucas climbed into the middle row, while John slid behind the wheel. "I'll drive," he said, adjusting his mirror. "I know exactly where to go." As they pulled out of the driveway, John couldn't help but notice how the house looked from the street. Porch light on, warm glow spilling from the windows onto a neatly manicured lawn. To any passerby, it was a normal family home on a calm evening. No hint of the turmoil that churned inside, or the painful absence that had shaped their lives for 14 years. The SUV rumbled down familiar roads, past Oak Hill High School, where all 5 siblings had studied, past the grocery store where their mother had supposedly gone the day she disappeared. John gripped the wheel, determined to hold to the speed limit even as his pulse thundered. "What did Detective Vaughn actually say?" Peter asked, breaking the tense silence. John kept his eyes forward. "Not much. He said they discovered Mom's car in a river while investigating another case. He wouldn't give details over the phone." "After all this time," Lucy murmured from the back. "Why now?" No one had an answer. John's phone buzzed with an incoming message. "Here's the location," he said, glancing down. "It's at Millerton Lake." "That's almost 30 minutes from here," Carl pointed out. "Why would Mom's car be all the way out there?" The unspoken suspicion lingered. Millerton Lake was remote. Exactly the kind of place someone wanting to vanish might choose. The rest of the drive was quiet, each of them lost in thought. As they left the town's lights behind, the road narrowed and streetlights disappeared. John switched on the bright headlights as they turned onto a gravel road winding through dense pines toward the lake. The SUV rattled over the rough ground, forcing John to slow as he navigated small ruts and puddles. After several slow minutes, the trees opened up to reveal the dark water of Millerton Lake, its surface reflecting the flashing lights of police cruisers parked along the shore. John parked as close to the edge as possible and turned around to his father. "You ready?" Peter nodded, his face set in determined resolve. Carl and Lucy lifted him from the car and back into his wheelchair, while Claire placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. They entered the police perimeter, stepping carefully. On the wet, muddy ground, an acrid smell filled the air, stagnant water, mud, and something else rotting from beneath the surface. Lucas wrinkled his nose and hung back, while his older siblings pushed the wheelchair forward across soft patches of ground that made the wheels bog down. Claire stayed close to her father's side, her arm linked with his as they approached the officers standing guard. John led the way, scanning the gathered law enforcement personnel for someone he recognized. He spotted Detective Vaughn near the water, talking with a uniformed officer. Vaughn was a stocky man in his early 50s, salt and pepper hair and a perpetually weary expression. "Detective Vaughn," John called, hurrying over. The detective turned, recognition lighting his face. "John, you made it." His gaze moved past John to the rest of the family, slowly approaching. "I see you brought everyone. We had to come," John replied. "What did you find?" Vaughn pointed toward the lake where a tow truck's winch had done its work. On the shore, a car sat half buried in mud, dripping black water everywhere. Despite 14 years underwater, there was no mistaking the faded blue sedan that once belonged to Catherine Wilson. "We found it early this afternoon," Vaughn explained as the family gathered around. "We weren't even looking for it. We had a helicopter searching this area as part of an ongoing drug trafficking investigation. The pilot saw something reflecting in the water and sent us in to check." Peter stared at the vehicle, expression unreadable. "Did you find—" he began, but Vaughn finished for him. "No bodies," he said. "That's the oddity. The car was completely empty when we pulled it out." "Empty?" Carl repeated, shock on his face. "Are you sure?" "Completely," Vaughn confirmed. "But we did find some interesting items inside." "What items?" John asked, leaning forward. Detective Vaughn held up a sealed evidence bag containing a water-damaged photograph. This was in the glove box, sealed in a plastic bag which helped preserve it. "It's a photograph of your mother." Peter reached out with trembling hands to take the bag, staring at the faded image of Catherine, smiling carefree, in a moment captured before her disappearance. "There was more," Vaughn continued, his tone growing cautious. "We found items that belonged to a man, a pair of men's sunglasses, a baseball cap, and a receipt with a man's name on it." "I knew it," Lucy said in a bitter voice. "She ran off with someone. How could she do that?" "We don't know that yet," John protested heatedly. "What other explanation is there?" Carl responded. "Mom's car at the bottom of the lake, men's items inside, no sign of her. It points to her staging her disappearance." "Our investigation suggests the car was deliberately sunk," Vaughn added. "There are no signs of accident damage. The windows were rolled down so the car would fill with water and sink. No indication of foul play otherwise." "She knew it was illegal," said Lucy, arms crossed. "She abandoned her 5 kids. She couldn't just walk away without consequences, so she faked something happening to her." "That's ridiculous," John shot back. "Mom would never abandon us like that." "But she did, right?" Lucy pressed, voice cracking. "Dad's in a wheelchair, we're drowning in medical bills, and she vanished without a trace. What else do you call that?" 14 years, John," Carl said gently. 14 years without a word. No letters, no calls, no nothing. What more evidence do you need?" The argument grew heated again, voices overlapping in a painful echo of past wounds. Lucas shrank in his seat, and Claire looked helplessly at her siblings. "Enough!" Peter's voice boomed, followed immediately by another intense coughing fit that bent him over in his wheelchair. The bickering stopped instantly. Claire rushed to her father's side, patting his back and giving him water until the cough subsided. "I'm sorry, Dad," she whispered. "Let's not do this. You've looked forward to tonight all week. You miss us. Can't we have one peaceful dinner?" A heavy silence settled over them, broken only by Peter's labored breathing as he recovered. "Fine," John finally said, sinking into his chair, jaw tense with frustration. "But you need to understand this isn't just another dead-end lead. The police found Mum's car underwater in a river. Even the most resistant among them snapped to attention." "What?" Peter's voice was barely above a whisper. "Detective Vaughn called me this afternoon," John continued. "He said they discovered Mum's car in a river. That's why I was late. I was on the phone with him to get all the details." Peter turned to Claire. "Get my phone from the side table, please." She hurried off, handing it to him. He tapped through notifications with trembling fingers, face growing pale. 4 missed calls from Detective Vaughn," he confirmed. "Did they find her body?" John shook his head. "I don't know. He said they're still processing the scene. He wants us to come down there." The news crashed over them, and dinner was forgotten as the reality settled in. "We should eat something first," Claire suggested gently, breaking the stunned grasp of the moment. Dad needs to take his medication.